July 19th, 2026. MetLife Stadium, New Jersey. 90 minutes gone, deep into stoppage time. World Cup final. Spain and Argentina locked at 0-0. A foul just outside the box. A free kick. A 19-year-old steps up to the ball. He does not look at the crowd. He does not look at the goalkeeper. He looks at the ball. He strikes it. The ball curls toward the top corner. The exact same shot, the exact same motion that once broke a record standing for 66 years. Emiliano Martinez dives. His fingers stretch toward it. And the ball. We will come back to that ball. Because to understand why 80,000 people held their breath for one kick, you have to go back 19 years. To a shelter on the edge of Barcelona where a 16-year-old girl held her newborn son and two strangers quietly paid her family's rent. On July 13, 2007, in a government shelter on the edge of Esplugues de Llobregat, Sheila Ebana gave birth to a boy. She was 16 years old. Her family had come from Bata on the coast of Equatorial Guinea. The father, Munir Nasraoui, had crossed from Larache in northern Morocco at the age of 9. He worked with his hands, painting walls, hauling whatever needed hauling, taking any job that paid that particular week. The money never stretched far enough. Some months, the rent did not get paid at all, and a teenage mother and a young laborer sat with a newborn son and no clear plan for the next 30 days. Two men in the neighborhood noticed. Their names were Lamine and Yamal. They did not lend money and expect it back. They told the young couple to forget about the rent for now and take care of the baby first. Sheila and Munir never forgot the gesture. When it came time to register their son's birth, they did not reach for a footballer's name or a saint's. They reached for two ordinary men who had shown up exactly when it mattered most. They named him Lamine Yamal. When the boy was 3, his parents separated. His mother moved north to Granollers, where she worked fast food shifts that began at 6 in the morning, long before he woke for school. His father stayed behind in Rocafonda, a crowded working-class stretch of Mataró, together with the boy's grandmother, who had arrived from Morocco decades earlier and never left. Lamine grew up shuttling between the two towns, one weekend here, the next weekend there. But it was Rocafonda that raised him, its cracked pavements, its balconies hung with laundry, its families from Morocco, Senegal, and Ecuador, who all somehow knew each other's names. Its postal code ends in 3 digits. 304. Hold on to those. Nobody discovered Lamine Yamal on a scouting trip with a clipboard. He was found completely by accident. A customer walked into the restaurant where his mother waited tables. Her own father ran a small local club, a few dusty, floodlit pitches called La Torreta. She noticed a 4-year-old kicking a bottle cap between the restaurant tables, faster and cleaner than the game required. She mentioned it to her father almost as an aside. Within weeks, the boy was registered at the club. Nobody asked the family for the usual fee. Nobody in that room needed convincing twice. By 4.5, his very first coaches had already hung a nickname on him. They called him Little Messi. He hated it before he even understood exactly why it stuck to him like that. On the concrete pitches between the apartment blocks of Rocafonda, nobody was handing out trophies for participation. Games were played against boys 2, sometimes 3 years older, on hard ground between parked cars, where a bad touch could cost you a scraped knee, and a worse one could cost you the ball for the rest of the afternoon. You learned to think 1 second faster than everyone else around you, because that second was the only real advantage a small kid ever had. You learned to laugh when someone knocked you down, because sulking only got you left out of the next game. If you were afraid out there, you simply did not play. And if you did not play in a neighborhood with not very much else on offer, you had nothing at all. Barcelona's scouts found him within 2 years, and by 6, he was already inside the academy that had built the greatest player of a generation. At La Masia, Lamine was almost always the smallest name on the team sheet, a year, sometimes 2, younger than the boys around him. Older kids did not slow down for a smaller opponent. He was knocked over more times than anyone in that academy bothered to count. He got up every single time, and coaches would say later that he was usually still smiling when he did, which unsettled the boys trying to intimidate him more than any skill move could. He climbed through the age groups fast, and the Little Messi label followed him the whole way, whispered by scouts, then said out loud by journalists, then finally shouted by an entire stadium. There is a photograph from 2007 that almost nobody outside the family had seen for 16 years. A 20-year-old Lionel Messi, hands still shaking a little, kneeling in a quiet room at Camp Nou to hold a 6-month-old baby he had never met. The baby's father kept that photograph hidden for over a decade and a half. He did not want journalists comparing his infant son to anybody before the boy had even learned to walk, let alone kick a ball. Only after Lamine had already become a star in his own right did his father finally share it with a short caption, "The beginning of 2 legends." By then, the comparison had already found him anyway. It always does. By 15, he was training alongside the first team. On April 29, 2023, Barcelona were beating Real Betis 4-0 at Camp Nou when the 4th official raised his board. Number 19. A boy jogged to the touchline who looked, to most of the 60,000 people watching, too young to be allowed on the pitch at all. 15 years, 9 months, 16 days old. The youngest player to wear the Barcelona shirt in over a century. Nobody in that stadium realized in that exact minute that they were watching a 100-year-old record fall in real time. There was a heavier weight waiting for him than any defender ever would be. Barcelona, in 2023, was a club still grieving. Lionel Messi, its greatest son, its king for 2 decades, had left 2 years before, and most of the trophies had left with him. Every promising kid who came through the academy since then got asked the exact same question. Are you the next Messi? Now a reporter put it to a 15-year-old straight off the bench from Rocafonda. He did not flinch, and he did not perform false humility either. I don't compare myself to anyone, he said. I only think about playing. He did not want to be the next Messi. He wanted to be the first Lamine Yamal, and he said so without raising his voice. Spain called him up that September. He was 16. His first cap came as a substitute in Tbilisi in a Euro qualifier against Georgia that Spain were already winning comfortably. A cross rolled to him at the back post. He did not rush it. He looked up. He placed the ball into the top corner as calmly as if it were a training drill. 16 years and 57 days old, the youngest player ever to score for the Spanish national team in his first appearance for it. His own teammates lifted him off the ground like a little brother, because at the time, he was still shorter than most of them. Then came the summer of 2024. Nobody expected much from Spain at the European Championship. The bigger reputations, the louder pre-tournament favorites, belonged to other countries. Spain had, among other things, a 16-year-old starting on the right wing. In the semifinal against France, with the score tied at 1 and the clock beginning to work against them, the ball rolled out to him 25 meters from goal. 2 defenders closed the gap fast. He cut inside onto his left foot and struck it without breaking stride. The ball curled, that exact shape that exact motion you already watched once a few minutes ago, past a diving Mike Maignan and in off the far post. 16 years, 362 days old, a record that had stood since Pelé set it in 1958, gone in a single evening in Munich. Spain won 2-1. It was, remarkably, not the last time a summer would come down to Spain against France, with Lamine Yamal standing in the middle of it. The following June, in a Nations League semi-final, he scored twice against that same French defense. Spain won 5-4, in a match that felt more like a shootout than a football game. Twice now, France had been the wall standing between Spain and a final. Twice now, the boy from Rocafonda had been the reason the wall came down. 4 days after that first Euro semi-final, on his 17th birthday, Spain met England in the final, in Berlin. Lamine set up the opening goal within the first hour. England equalized soon after. Then, in the 86th minute, with the stadium too loud to hear your own thoughts in, Spain scored the winner. Champions of Europe, and Lamine, at 17 years and 1 day old, the youngest player in the tournament's entire history to even reach a final, let alone win one. On the podium, holding the trophy above his head under a wall of camera flashes, he lifted 3 fingers, then a 0, then a 4. The postal code of a neighborhood most of the stadium had never heard of, shown to the entire world, in the middle of the single biggest moment of his life so far. He had just turned 17. He was a European champion. By every measure that matters to a teenager, it was, without question, the best month of his life. It would not stay that way for long. 1 month later, on August 14, 2024, in a car park in Rocafonda, on the very streets whose postal code he had just shown the entire world, his father was attacked with a knife after an argument while out walking the family dog. Munir Nasraoui was rushed to hospital. 4 people were later arrested in connection with the attack. He was discharged 3 days after, and in time made a full recovery. But for those 3 days, Lamine Yamal, reigning European champion, the most talked about teenager on the planet, a boy whose face was on magazine covers on 3 continents, was simply a boy waiting by a phone for news about his father, on the exact streets where he had first learned to kick a ball between parked cars. No trophy protects you from a call like that. No record does either. Not even 80,000 people chanting your name can reach into a hospital corridor and make the waiting shorter. He kept playing. He kept scoring. Barcelona leaned on him more with every passing month, and he rarely looked like it weighed on him from the outside. But underneath the smile that photographers loved so much, another kind of pressure was building. Quieter than a knife, much harder to point at or name out loud. Everyone wanted him to be the youngest, the greatest, the next name at the very top of every list. And they wanted it now, not eventually, not after a few more seasons of patience. In September 2025, at the Ballon d'Or ceremony inside the Théâtre du Châtelet in Paris, that pressure finally had a number attached to it. He finished second. Ousmane Dembélé won it, 1,380 points to Lamine's 1,059, the only 2 players anywhere in the world that year to break 1,000. Lamine did not sulk in front of the cameras. He did not make excuses to a single reporter. He shook Dembélé's hand, smiled for the photograph, and said simply that he would keep working. But people who were actually in the room that night noticed he went quiet afterward. The particular, specific kind of quiet that only shows up when something you genuinely wanted slips past you in front of everyone who was watching you lose it. By 18, he had already broken records most professional footballers never come close to touching across a full career. He had survived a fear that no trophy on earth can protect a family against. But the one prize every 18-year-old on the planet had already assumed was his, he did not have it. Not yet. And nobody, least of all him, knew whether not yet would turn into never. The summer of 2026 arrived, and with it, a World Cup spread across 3 countries: the United States, Mexico, Canada, the biggest edition the tournament had ever staged. Spain had not lost a competitive match in nearly 2 years.
Lamine turned 19 the day before Spain's semifinal. He was no longer the surprise anyone could shrug off before kickoff. He was the name every single opposing coach built a defensive plan specifically around. And still, more often than not, teams simply could not contain him for 90 minutes. The tournament unfolded like a gauntlet, one round tighter than the last. A hamstring injury had threatened to derail his entire World Cup before it even started. In the round of 32, still not fully sharp, he came off the bench area and was named man of the match anyway in a knockout win over Austria. In the round of 16, an Iberian derby in Dallas put him directly across from Cristiano Ronaldo, the closing act of Ronaldo's last World Cup, against the opening act of someone else's. Spain won 1-0, a stoppage-time strike from substitute Mikel Merino, sending Ronaldo home for good.
In the quarter-final, in Los Angeles, Spain edged Belgium 2-1, Merino scoring the winner again, this time 2 minutes after coming off the bench. And waiting in the semifinal, for the 3rd summer running, stood France. This time, Lamine did not need to score to decide it himself. 22 minutes in, he chased down a loose ball inside the box, cushioned it off his chest, and was sived to the ground by a French defender. Penalty. Mikel Oyarzabal buried it low into the corner. In the 58th minute, Pedro Porro doubled the lead. Spain won 2-0, their 3rd straight tournament semifinal victory over France in 3 consecutive summers, and Lamine Yamal had a direct hand in every single one of them. Spain were through to their first World Cup final since 2010. Their opponents in the final? Argentina, the defending champions, with Lionel Messi, the man in that hidden photograph, playing in what almost everyone in world football assumed would be the last World Cup match of his career. 2 players, 39 years apart in age, on opposite ends of the same story, standing on the same pitch at MetLife Stadium on a July evening in front of 82,000 people and a television audience in the hundreds of millions. 90 minutes finished scoreless. Spain dominated the ball. Argentina barely crossed the halfway line. Still, 0-0. Then, in second-half stoppage time, 3 minutes that changed everything. First, a scramble in the box. Nico Williams poked it home. Spain thought they had it. VAR chalked it off. Seconds later, Enzo Fernandez, already on a yellow card, went in late on Pau Cubarsí. Second booking. Red card. Argentina, 10 men, still had to survive extra time. And with the last kick of normal time, a foul just outside the box gave Spain one more chance. That free kick, the one we started with. The whole stadium seemed to hold its breath at once. Lamine struck it exactly the way he had struck the ball against France, 2 summers and 1 lifetime ago. The ball curled toward the top corner. Emiliano Martinez threw himself full length across his goal and got the very tips of his fingers to it. Saved. His 10th save of the afternoon. Extra time. The chance was gone. The game was not. Deep into the second half of extra time, a substitute named Ferran Torres pounced on a loose ball bouncing awkwardly inside the penalty area and drove it low under the crossbar. 1-0, 106th minute. 10-man Argentina, exhausted, had nothing left to answer with.
Spain. The country, the streets, 47 million people, in the words of the man who actually scored the goal, were world champions for the second time in their history. Lamine did not score the winning goal himself. In the end, it did not matter at all. He sank to the grass for a moment, then stood, then found his teammates in a pile near the corner flag. And when the celebrations reached their loudest point, with confetti falling under the stadium lights, he lifted 3 fingers, then a 0, then a 4. One more time, this time as a world champion, not merely as a champion of Europe. There is a wall in Rocafonda today, painted by someone whose name nobody bothered to write down. It reads, "More Lamine Yamals, fewer evictions." Not far from that wall is the bar where his father still stops for coffee most mornings, where a signed shirt hangs framed behind the counter, where neighbors still ask after the grandmother who helped raise a World Cup winner out of a 2-room flat with laundry drying on the balcony. 19 years ago, a 16-year-old girl in a government shelter could not be certain her family would make next month's rent. She did not know 2 strangers named Lamine and Yamal were about to hand her son a name he would carry onto the biggest stages in world sport. Now, that name is stitched onto shirts sold on 6 continents, chanted in stadiums in languages he does not speak. Somewhere between those 2 facts, a shelter with no rent money and a trophy lifted in front of 80,000 people 19 years later, sits the entire story. Not a lesson, not a moral wrapped up neatly at the end. Just a postal code, held up 3 fingers at a time, by a boy who never once forgot exactly which streets had taught him not to be afraid of any of it. Here's something worth arguing about in the comments. What actually made Lamine Yamal, the streets of Rocafonda that shaped him before he could read, or the fact that fear, somewhere along the way, simply never got the chance to take hold? Pick one. Tell me why. I'll read every answer.